Hello everyone, this is your friend Uzumkai Universe 2.0 and we are back in new fanfic. What if Naruto discovered the legendary sword, and Kurenai became the queen of his harem? Part 5. The last chapter probably seemed a little rushed at the end. Yes, it was. The second part of the exam is hard to change, it is changeable, but with the direction I had brought my story, I did not feel anything needed to be added or really changed. On a side note, do not expect long fights from me. Ninja will end fights fast and I am not really much of a fighter myself, so my fights might be a little unrealistic. But hey, that's what fanfiction is for, right? Now let's find some answers, shall we? There is often less danger in the things we fear than in the things we desire. John C. Collins. Chapter 10 Talks, Loves, and Godfathers. Naruto was pulled into his mindscape. He had heard Kyuubi's voice from inside his head. He was a bit curious as to why she did not just rip herself from his body when he removed the seal. He was happy that she had given him time, but confused. He knew he held feelings for the golden demoness inside him. She was his closest friend and helped him anytime Kamikaze could not. She was an invaluable comrade, even stuck within him she was powerful. He had never really needed her help, but he knew he could count on her should the time come he needed to. He had decided he would not show fear to her. He would fight her for his freedom and for hers if he had to. He did not think she deserved this prison. She had been tortured long enough. She attempted to make amends, which was why he was willing to forgive her, unlike the villagers. He was prepared to even accept her love if a demoness could have such a thing. But he would not mate with her willingly if she could not love him. He would use all of his power and skill to fight her until he couldn't move. He had thought all this as he made his way to the knoll his Kyuubi had picked out within his mind. He had changed it back once he had woken from the curse seal. He crested the knoll to find Kyuubi standing in the sunlight, cutting her imposing figure. Her back turned to him. He walked up to her side and looked at her face being bathed in sunlight. He smiled softly, seeing peace on her face. She had always had a slightly fearful look to her since he had met her in her human form. He admired her 9 flowing yellow tails with the golden blonde fox ears, flowing freely as if having a mind of their own. He sighed and stepped away from her as she turned to face him. So how are we going to do this? Naruto asked as he got into a fighting stance. Kyuubi edged her head to the side, which Naruto thought was pretty cute, and said, "Do what, Naruto-kun?" Naruto looked at her with a blank expression. "Aren't we going to fight?" Kyuubi looked at him before asking, "Did you mean it?" Naruto looked confused. "Mean what?" Kyuubi looked down and her hair covered her eyes as she asked, "What you said in Kiri, did you mean it?" Naruto looked even more confused for a moment before it came back to him in a whisper, "I like her. I am sure I could come to love her given the chance. The same to you if you did not try to claim me just for your own power play. From your personality that you have shown, you show just as much in a woman as any of the ones I might potentially look at," he had said to her when thinking about May. "Of course I did. I still do. You don't really realize how much you mean to me, do you?" Kyuubi was still looking down before saying, "Then this discussion is over. I hope you don't change your mind when you wake up, Naruto-kun. I hope I can get what I want in the morning." Naruto was suddenly thrust out of his mindscape. He promptly fell asleep from the exhaustion of the day. Kyuubi was crying in his mindscape, hoping that what he said would be true. Time to work. Outside of Naruto's body, chakra began coalescing and swirling from his stomach, making a shape. Once it was complete, Naruto sighed contentedly at the extra weight on his chest and fell into a deeper sleep as another's breath joined the 3 loves in bed. Naruto woke to the sounds of his love's breathing. He could feel an extra weight on his chest, but just Yumed, either Kurenai or Yugao had climbed onto his chest during the night. It wouldn't have been the first time. He kept his eyes closed, enjoying the loving feelings he was experiencing. He knew he loved these 2. He had yet to say it to them, but he had his plans. His pants seemed a little tight this morning though. Strangely enough, it wasn't the front of his pants but his back that seemed to be restricting him. He heard 3 sighs of content as he moved his body around trying to relieve the pressure. Wait 3. Naruto cracked his eyes open to a mess of blonde hair and fox ears. Naruto's eyes widened as he realized who was on top of him. He began to panic lightly, trying to figure out what to do. He knew the town could not survive another attack, but he was not concerned with that. He was concerned she would attack Kurenai or Yugao for being with him. Though she had never said she hated them, she had never really liked them. He quickly calmed down though. Once his slight panic attack was over, his logical side kicked in. Why wasn't she just taking him? Why was she sleeping here as if there was nothing else she would rather be doing? Why had she not killed Yugao or Kurenai yet? All of these things ped through his head as he heard groaning beginning from Kurenai, which promptly elicited the same from Yugao, who was a lighter sleeper. Kurenai and Yugao rubbed their eyes sleepily as they looked down at Naruto being snuggled into by another blonde-haired woman. They immediately started to glare once they realized the situation. Kyuubi promptly woke up when feeling the sizable amount of ki Kurenai and Yugao were exuding. Naruto-kun, who is this woman? Kurenai asked sweetly while Yugao added a death glare that promised pain if he did not answer correctly. Naruto sat up and got out of striking distance before turning to the 3 girls on the bed who were still looking at him expectantly. I have kept something hidden from you too. For that I beg your forgiveness, but please hear me out. I promise if you wish to beat me into a bloody pulp afterwards, I will do nothing to stop you. Naruto said. Yugao and Kurenai seemed pleased and sat down in a more comfortable position. Naruto explained who Kyuubi was. How he had met her. The claiming him from them for being the strongest. His mother's status as Fox friend. All the while his pants still seemed stretched and Kyuubi's tails and ears just twitched around as Kurenai and Yugao stared at her with hate and slight fear after hearing her stake a claim on their boyfriend. Naruto finished with his fox summoning contract and how he had broke the curse seal in the discussion last night. They looked a bit happy at her for the curse seal but were curious about last night. Kyuubi sighed. Naruto-kun, there are a few things you do not know. For example, would you let your tails out please? Naruto blinked. Tails? He looked around to his backside and saw the bulge in his pants. He laughed sheepishly as he pulled them out. As he released them, 9 flowing crimson tails with golden streaks in 3 of them came flowing out of his tailbone. Naruto promptly said, "What the?" and turned to Kyuubi for an explanation. He could not get anything else out as he was tackled by Kurenai and Yugao, who screamed, "Kawaii," and they immediately began playing with his fox tails. Naruto noticed how sensitive they were. He could feel each brush of their hands as waves of pleasure sent through his body. He started purring almost immediately and Kurenai and Yugao stopped for a second before realizing what had happened and continued. Kyuubi chuckled seeing their reactions. "Goose, you girls have no problem with him being a Hanyu then. Though I doubt you would leave him at this point," she said with a smile. Kurenai and Yugao immediately stopped and looked at Kyuubi. They were reminded she was still here. Naruto took advantage of the momentary lapse in petting and stood up and got in front of Kurenai and Yugao. "What do you want?" he asked Kyuubi. Kyuubi looked down for a second before responding. "I asked you if you meant what you said and you said you did. I ask again, do you still think you can love someone like me even though because of me you are this?" Kyuubi asked, waving to his tails and fox ears. Naruto looked at Kurenai and Yugao before asking, "Does this change your feelings towards me?" Kurenai was first to respond. "Not a chance. If anything, I have something else I might want to cuddle with at night," she said while grabbing onto one of the tails with golden streaks in it. "Crimson and gold, my favorite colors, and it is soft and fluffy," she said with a giggle. Yugao smiled and said, "Not at all. If anything, this makes you more powerful, right? I know you will not harm us," with determination hanging in her eyes. Naruto said, "Thank you." to them before turning to Kyuubi. There you have it. The only reason I would have resented it is if they would have left me for it. Kyuubi's eyes watered as she heard him speak those words. I wanted you initially for your power, but you have such a kind heart, Naruto. You can even love the demon who attacked and killed your father and caused your life to be hell. Why? Why are you so damn kind? She stood there racked silently with sobs before she felt Naruto's arms around her. I can because you feel like this. You regret it. Even if you are a demon, you still have emotions. If you felt nothing for killing all of them, I might not, but you care. I wish I could invite you to stay here, but I get the feeling you don't like Kurenai and Yugao. You are welcome to live in the old house I built or in one of the other houses on the compound. Naruto answered while stroking her back. Kurenai and Yugao were shocked at this turn of events. The Kyuubi was crying. They couldn't stand it and went and wrapped their arms around Kyuubi as well after Naruto had finished. Kyuubi looked up and said, "But I love you. I don't want to be separated any longer. I was only jealous of Kurenai and Yugao because they could interact with you when I could not." She blushed at the sentence and said, "Please don't make me leave. I have never felt this before. I didn't think I would ever feel such a thing," she admitted, looking sad. Naruto looked at Kurenai and Yugao and they both nodded. Very well then. Let's get back in bed. I wasn't finished cuddling with my girlfriends and breakfast will be ready soon. After that I need to train for the next part of the exams. With that they all resumed their original positions. Kurenai on his right, Yugao on his left and Kyuubi on his chest. Kurenai had two tails wrapped in her arms as she stroked them and Naruto started to purr from deep in his chest, eliciting slight giggles from Kyuubi. Naruto sighed. He wished life would always be as simple as when he was training. He was outside in his family's training ground. He had yet to tell the old man he had found his heritage. He was keeping the ruse up at the other house, having KBs take care of it and go in and out the house with communication if they needed it. He had perfected the Rasengan only just today. He looked around at the destruction. He was impressed with the damage it caused. He had decided to hold off on the Harem. He was going to look at it and see if he could use it, but he was not going to train with it just yet. His body was at level 9 for the resistance seal, but he wanted to grow a little more. Kurenai and Yugao were out shopping. Naruto was going to make a special dinner tonight in honor of Kyuubi being out of the seal. He was happy she was not going to try to steal him away. Though he was curious if she had a problem with sharing. Though it looked like she didn't, he couldn't be sure. It was nearing lunchtime and Naruto headed back inside the house for a quick shower. After his quick shower he packed a light lunch and figured he would ask Kyuubi to join him for a picnic within the grounds for a small lunch date to get to know her a little better. He found her curled into a ball on the porch sunbathing. He chuckled at the cute sight as Kyuubi's ears twitched and she stretched and sent him a smile. "Would you like to join me, Kyuubi-chan?" he said, holding the picnic basket up in his hands. Kyuubi looked surprised for a second before responding, "I would love to." She got up and padded over to Naruto. Kurenai and Yugao had on clothes for their shopping as well. Naruto did not want Kyuubi leaving the compound just yet. They wandered through the mini forest talking with the foxes who all bowed to Naruto and Kyuubi. Kyuubi giggled as she watched the foxes play around her. She had not been in her human form much before this and was enjoying it. Naruto just admired her as she relaxed. She seemed one with nature and especially calm while walking around the foxes. They finally found a clearing they liked, so Naruto set up the blanket for them to sit on and pulled out the sandwiches he had made and handed one to Kyuubi, who started to nibble on it. They sat there in silence, reveling in the nature before Naruto decided to start his usual questionnaire. "So Kyuubi-chan, I doubt that is your true name. It seems more like a title. Could I get your actual name now that you want to stay with me?" Naruto asked. Kyuubi blushed and said, "You caught that, huh? I was going to tell you anyway, but my name is Katsumi." Naruto nodded, then noticed the change in her voice. Why is your voice different? It's nice, so harmonious, but you always had this power-induced voice. Kyuubi nodded. When my emotions of anger or frustration or nervousness run high, I will get my deep voice, but when I am calm or around you, I probably will not get it. Naruto nodded, then asked, why only around me? Kyuubi hesitated, then said, Naruto-kun, did you ever wonder why women seemed so comfortable around you? How they would open themselves easily to you? Naruto nodded, then said, yes, I had wondered, but I could come with no answer for it. Kyuubi hesitated, then said, you have inherited my allure ability. I am the strongest demon out there, but a lust-crazed male could still overpower me if he had enough tails. I would use my allure to calm them down enough to sneak away. There is a second reason behind this, but it is a very closely guarded secret among demonkind. Should we ever progress as far as I hope, I will tell you. Naruto nodded. Thank you for being honest. Now anything you like to collect. I assume you like foxy things. Katsumi giggled. I like lightning things. Little bracelets with lightning bolts. Things of that nature. I love to watch a lightning storm. It's so pretty and full of power. She gushed. Naruto developed a little bit of a sweat drop. Okay. What about dreams? Katsumi blushed but said, I always wanted my own litter of kits. No male kitsune has interested me before. I could not take a human as they are not immortal. She looked a little sad. I have to tell him. She thought to herself. Naruto-kun, there's something I didn't tell you in front of Kurenai and Yugao because of your Hanyu status. Katsumi said, looking down again. Naruto blinked before smiling slightly. What is it, Katsumi-chan? Katsumi giggled at her honorific and said, well, I don't really know how to say this. You're immortal. Not invincible, just immortal and hard to kill. She said, trying to clarify. Naruto was gobsmacked. He was immortal. What did that mean for Kurenai and Yugao? Could he stay with them knowing he would have to live past their lives and their kids' lives? Could he stand by and watch as another man made them happy? Could he? He was cut from his musings as Katsumi saw his face and spoke. Naruto-kun, I only told you because you need to break to Kurenai and Yugao that they will become immortal too. When you mate with them. Which I am sure is going to be fairly soon considering your thoughts. You will mark them as your mates. They will gain a life tied to yours. If you die before they would normally, they will simply age regularly, but if you live, they will die when you do. They will stop aging in a few years to make sure their bodies are fully developed. Naruto sighed as he took this in. But he quirked an eyebrow at something she said. So I can mark multiple mates. Katsumi blushed. She does that a lot in this discussion, and responded, the stronger the demon male, the more mates he will have. It is a defense mechanism for our species because we are warlike. The stronger you are, the more you are driven to have mates so that we have the strongest reproducing. Females wait for love, but males usually are driven by their lust. Which is incredible for you. You have resisted doing anything with two very strong mates right next to you for almost 4 months now. Naruto smiled and said, I will never do something they don't want, plus I only really think I was ready for that recently. Katsumi chuckled. You know as well as I that both of them would get their fair share of wet dreams to you. But we are getting off subject. When you are mating with them, your instincts will lead you. They might turn into Hanyas, they might not. Either way, their chakra will increase, they will gain senses and strength. Whatever their specialty is will probably be enhanced. Katsumi then turned a sad smile to Naruto. Your kids, however, will not be immortal. They will have long lives compared to the humans around them, probably close to 200 to 300 years, but you will live to be as old as you wish. I must warn you. Naruto was a little saddened at that, but he would not want a bunch of himself running around. Does this mean all Hanyu are immortal? Also, if I were to mate with you, would our kids be immortal? Katsumi turned beet red at having with Naruto and said, No, you are immortal because our souls are linked, and all Biju are immortal. Your mates would gain the same because your mate mark intertwines your souls much like the seal on your stomach, only differently, which is why should you wish to mate with me, you should mark me as well. Should we have kits, they would live especially long just like any other demon unless they gain Kyuubi status, in which case they would grow immortal. However, I am the only one to ever do so. Naruto nodded, taking in all the information he needed for the girls and himself. He sighed. Well, this turned very serious when I was expecting it to be a light talk. Thank you, Katsumi-chan, for this information. Let's head home, we have been here much longer than I wanted, he said as he looked at the sky. I need to get the dinner ready, and I think we will tell Kurenai and Yugao about this tonight while we eat. Katsumi nodded and they headed home. That night Naruto pulled out all of his culinary skill. He made each of the girls' favorites and they all ate healthily. After they had finished eating dinner and getting to know Katsumi like Naruto had, Kurenai and Yugao suggested they retire to the bed and cuddle a bit before going to bed. They dragged Katsumi off before Naruto could say anything and they went to the closet as Naruto changed. Naruto got into his regular sweatpants and decided to forego a shirt tonight. He turned as he heard the closet open. His jaw dropped. Kurenai and Yugao had spent the whole day shopping and spending Naruto's money. He didn't mind if they spent all his money anytime, but they felt particularly spendy today, so they splurged and bought whatever they thought looked good. They picked out plenty of clothes for Katsumi and they had the most fun at the lingerie sections in the store. She had said her favorite color was yellow-white like a lightning bolt. So they went with that as a color basis. They loved Naruto and wanted to put a bit of a show on. They were getting quite risque in their teasing of him lately, but they planned something to see Katsumi's attraction to Naruto. They dragged Katsumi into the closet and explained their plan. Katsumi, as they had expected, loved the mischievous idea while she blushed. So they had put her in a teddy like they had, only this was in her favorite color. It had cost a little bit more than normal for the weird color, but it had proven to be worth it to see Naruto's jaw drop as all three of his women walked out wearing teddies with matching panties. Kurenai's was her crimson, Yugao's her gold. Katsumi was blushing, but once Kurenai and Yugao started moving towards Naruto, she regained her composure. Naruto's brain restarted as the girls began their trek to him. He was almost blown back by a nosebleed. Luckily he had seen Kurenai's and Yugao's bare ass, so he managed to hold it in. He stared at Katsumi, her pale skin looked so soft. As he could attest to. Her ass seemed to be poking towards him, asking him to touch them. He had to consciously stop himself from jumping the three of them. Kurenai and Yugao chuckled as Naruto drooled. They both closed his jaw and Kurenai whispered, "You're drooling, Naru-kun." Naruto looked at her and back at Katsumi. All of a sudden Kurenai found herself in a heated tongue battle with the blonde Hanyu. She moaned as he grabbed her butt. He turned to Yugao and repeated his kissing scene while grabbing her butt for added emphasis. He turned back to Katsumi and said, "Well, what are you waiting for? Get over here." Katsumi jumped into his arms and pressed her lips to his. Naruto used his kissing knowledge to rock her world. His lips are so soft. Katsumi thought as she pulled back. Wow, that was much better than I thought it would have been. Naruto chuckled. Let's cuddle, I have something to tell Kurenai and Yugao, right, Katsumi-chan? Yugao said in a sweet voice. Ah, but Naru-kun, that is not the end of the show tonight. Naruto looked to his girls as he backed to the bed and sat down. Each of the girls looked at each other before nodding. Katsumi was first, with Yugao and Kurenai helping her. They ripped the teddy off her chest and she blushed but put her arm under her chest. Well, Naruto-kun, you said you would like mine as much as Kurenai-chan's and Yugao-chan's. Naruto's body seemed to answer for him as his lower head swelled. He stared at her s. They were poking out, showing the arousal her could smell. But that was not the thing that caught his attention. Areola were the weirdest color of yellow like her hair. Don't flame me, she is a demoness, besides the usual colors are overused. Can't he have some weirdness? Naruto nodded his head. Yes, I love them just as much as Harems and Megumis. At this point Kurenai and Yugao had their girls hanging free as well. He looked around and noticed he was surrounded before he was pushed onto the bed and they all snuggled into their usual spots with Katsumi taking his stomach as a pillow and Kurenai and Yugao taking his chest. So Naru-kun, what was it you wanted to tell us? Kurenai asked. Naruto hesitated a little before explaining how he was immortal and how if they were to be with him they might change into Hanyas themselves and they would live forever. The benefits of such a thing and how long their children would live. He explained everything Katsumi had said. As he finished they looked amazed and slightly sad. Naruto finished with, "So if you would like to end this now I would not." He was promptly silenced by a bop to the head from both of his mortal counterparts. Kurenai flipped her head opening her neck to him. "So you need to bite us, right? Well, go ahead, I already love you, Naru-kun. I would gladly spend the rest of time with you and Katsumi-chan." Yugao flipped her hair as well. "That was for keeping Katsumi-chan from us as well. I love you too, Naru-kun, you are not getting rid of us so easily. The rest of my days, mortal or not, will be spent with you and Kurenai-chan." Naruto had tears in his eyes. He responded by kissing each on the offered necks. "I have to do it while we are mating. Once we reach that stage, one will mark the both of you. Have no doubt. I love you, Megumi-chan. I love you, Murasaki Harem. No human has told me they love me with such paeon. Thank you, the both of you." Kurenai gasped. They had shown their love through gestures, but he had never said he loved them. She immediately shivered as she felt his Yuki blanket the area. It was so calming to her. She snuggled into his chest, happy to know she was with such a man. Yugao was shocked. He actually said the words. 3 little words, but they had such an effect. She shivered as she felt the words take effect. She was so relieved. He had shown his love but never said anything. She sighed as his Yuki blanketed her. Katsumi looked at Naruto with hurt eyes. "I told you I loved you," she said with tears in her eyes. Naruto looked at her. "I said human, did I not? My demoness has always loved me. I knew that from the moment you tried to claim me. I do not see humans and demons as the same, but I do not really see Kurenai and Yugao as humans. They are the scum of the countries. They commit the most horrible crimes, but they have their redeeming qualities. Kurenai and Yugao are the redeeming qualities to me." Katsumi smiled. "I love you, Naruto-kun." Naruto looked at her a little shocked. She came out and said it. "I cannot lie to you. My feelings for you are very strong. I do not love you yet, but it will take much less time to love you. I have known you the longest, but we have not connected. Once I feel your connection, I will say those very words back to you," responded Naruto. Katsumi leaned up and kissed him again on the lips. "I know, but I am willing to wait." Naruto smiled and said, "Let's go to sleep. I want to go to the General Hot Springs tomorrow around lunch. It's nice to get out every now and again. Katsumi-chan, can you show me how to hide these features?" Katsumi giggled. "Just will them to change back. It is a natural defense ability." Naruto did as she said and sighed in relief. "Good night, Megumi-chan, Murasaki Harem, Kuhi-sama Queen." With that the four fell asleep. Content. Time skip the next day about 3. Naruto, Katsumi, Kurenai, and Yugao were walking to the public hot springs. Once Naruto had suggested it, the girls had immediately invited Anko, Hinata, and Haku once they woke up the next morning and were planning to meet them there. Naruto had invited Shino, but the guy was not comfortable being out in the open without his coat, and Kurisu was handling a new sment of swords, so he didn't have the time. So Naruto was left to go without a wingman while the girls enjoyed their friends. They arrived at the hot springs seeing Anko, Hinata, and Haku there. No one had expected Katsumi, but she just introduced herself as a friend of Naruto's from when he killed bandits. She had been accepted readily enough. The girls quickly left Naruto alone to go enjoy the springs. Naruto made his way to the hot springs after he had changed into his towel. He washed himself and settled into the hot water. The afternoon sun bearing down on the springs from behind the clouds made it a perfect day for outdoor bathing. Naruto looked around as he settled in and noticed there was not anyone in the immediate area and closed his eyes to soak in the water. As Naruto soaked, he heard a giggle come from behind a big rock. It was not the womanly giggle he was accustomed to. No, this sounded a bit deeper with another tone to it. Naruto was pondering what it could be when he heard it again. Naruto decided to check it out. He got up and walked through the springs to peek around the rock. He came across a peculiar sight. The man was white-haired with a long mane down his back in a ponytail. He wore a red gi with a green undershirt and geta sandals. His pants were the same green of his undershirt. Naruto was pretty sure he knew who this was. If what he heard was correct, he would be beating his godfather to a pulp for peeping on his girlfriends. He waited a few seconds, but a better idea came to mind. This will teach him to peep on my women, he thought. Quickly going through the signs for summoning, he summoned a three-tail messenger kit. What's your name, little one? And would you like to help me prank a pervert? Naruto asked. My name is Akiko. And I would love to prank a pervert. Where is he? What are we going to do? Akiko said as she wagged her three red tails around. Naruto smirked. Well, Akiko-chan. We are, as he whispered what he wanted Akiko to do in her ear. Akiko's grin grew wider and wider until she tackled Naruto after he finished and said, my older sister, Akemi, is a eight-tails. She is the strongest ninjutsu fox out there. If you ever need anything, make sure you summon her. I will tell her of you and she will no doubt be delighted to help such a devious mind. Naruto smirked and said, ah, thank you, Akiko-chan. He rubbed her behind her ears before hearing another perverted giggle. But it's time for a prank. Kurenai, Anko, Yugao, Katsumi, Hinata, and Haku were all enjoying the hot springs. They had been soaking in the water after washing each other's backs. They were making small talk when they heard a commotion by the divider, and suddenly a man jumped into the divider, knocking it down. Ah, Kyuubi, he yelled while looking back. Katsumi, Kurenai, and Yugao all tensed before looking back at the man to see him staring at a little fox kid with one tail wagging behind her. All of the girls immediately looked at the man who was staring in abject fear and now confusion at the kid before turning around and getting a perverted leer. Anko and Haku were first to react. Hentai. They both shouted and proceeded to pommel the man within an inch of his life before the other girls joined in. Meanwhile, Naruto and Akiko were laughing behind the rock, keeping out of sight, but Katsumi heard them and grinned. Okay, Naruto-kun, come on out. You won't be hurt. I just want you to get your reward for giving us this pervert. Naruto stiffened and let Akiko go first. Go first, they will believe me better if you appear first. Akiko nodded, hoping her new pranking partner wouldn't be mush by the end of this. All the girls turned to the rock and watched as Akiko swam out from behind the rock and Naruto edged around it, keeping his eyes directly on Katsumi. So any reason why you decided to prank this poor excuse of a fleshbag? Haku asked. All of the girls had towels on, hiding their chests and private areas. He is my godfather and he deserved it for peeking at my girlfriends. Naruto said while Akiko nodded. Kurenai sighed. Well, we thank you, Naruto-kun, but we had our fun. Can you put the barrier back up and block the peeping hole he made? Naruto nodded, and soon the girls were enjoying their pervert-free bath again. Back on the male side, Akiko poofed away to the summon world after having told Naruto to summon her anytime he needed. As soon as Akiko poofed away, the man started to groan. Wow, he must have had this happen a lot. Oh, what hit me? The man asked. A bunch of girls who hate perverts. Naruto responded. Now if you would kindly leave, I would like to soak in peace. The man looked at Naruto before his eyes widened slightly and he said, Kid, do you know who I am? Naruto looked at him and said, yes, a pervert and a failure of a man. Now leave me alone. Naruto turned to walk away and leave his peaceful soak ruined. The man looked confused before he got angry. You gaki need to show respect to your elders. He started his weird introduction dance, I am, blah blah blah. The Toad Sage, Jiraiya. Naruto scoffed as he looked at his godfather. Yes, great Toad Sage Jiraiya Mai. And turned to leave again. Well, how about I train you? Think you would respect me then? Jiraiya said, trying to get some time with his godson. No thanks, I have a whole estate for that. Naruto said flippantly. Whole estate? Gaki, you live in a house that is 2 stories tall with no library. What possible estate are you talking about? Jiraiya said. He had been briefed by Sarutobi about where he lived. Sarutobi had said he did not know his heritage and that he was currently living with 2 kunoichi. Naruto scowled. No, I don't, Mr. Spymaster of Konoha. If you can't even figure out where I live, how the hell could you possibly be a spymaster? Jiraiya was shocked. Then what the hell was the gaki talking about? I know some of the fourth's techniques, he said, trying to play a trump card. Naruto held out his hand as a Rasengan appeared in it. This one, or the one that requires you to be a seal's master to even look at? Chuckling at his godfather's hanging jaw. How do you know that? I am the only one who knows the mechanics of that jutsu. Jiraiya shouted. Naruto, tired of this game. How do you think, godfather? Naruto said with venom in his voice. Even Gigi couldn't figure out I was living somewhere I shouldn't. Pathetic, really, considering I have 2 people living with me. I should be under constant Anbu watch while within the city walls, yet it seems the Anbu have not been doing their job. Of course, they wouldn't need to if you were doing your job. Jiraiya backpedaled from the venom sent his way. But Naruto was not done. So what lame excuse do you have for leaving me to starve on the streets, godfather? What pitiful mission could take up so much time you could not appear even on my birthdays? Why, when you should have been there all my life, was I left to fend for myself, and why have I not met you until I find you and you do not seek me out? Then you have the nerve to try and train me in my own inheritance. You are far worse than I thought you to be. But, I would like to hear your excuses so I may warm my cold childhood with your voice. Jiraiya was stunned. Sarutobi had not told him Naruto held so much hate. He said he was a happy-go-lucky kid that was unusually mature for his age and already on the road to being a clan head and Hokage. Jiraiya immediately tried to defend himself. The spy network needed to be maintained with Konoha so weakened we could not afford to lose our information. I could not take you on the road because the council would have never let me. Naruto chuckled a menacing chuckle. So you have not been back to the village in 13 years? With a raised eyebrow. No, I would stop in and deliver reports to the Hokage and receive reports on you. Jiraiya said. So not one of those times did you think to stop in and introduce yourself as some powerful ninja? According to the reports filed for me, I would have jumped at the chance just to talk to you. You need not have explained your real reason. Naruto countered. Jiraiya hung his head. He had not seen Naruto. Even when he returned, he would leave almost immediately after. So you had time to gallivant off into the sunset betting whore after whore and writing your smut books, but you could not spend 5 minutes once a year talking to a lonely boy who was your godson. I hope you live well, godfather. I hope you can face the afterlife. Do what you must for Konoha. With that, Naruto exited the hot springs, leaving a confused Jiraiya whose first thought was, I need to talk to sensei. This is going to be really bad if he turns against Konoha. Jiraiya disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Jiraiya appeared in the Hokage's office within seconds and looked at his mentor. We need to talk, he said with a serious expression. Sarutobi looked startled. For Jiraiya to be so serious was unusual, and it usually spelled bad news for him. He quickly made a Kage Bunshin to work on the paperwork and set up a silencing seal. Yes. You said Naruto was mid-chunin, correct? Jiraiya asked. Sarutobi frowned and said, yes, that is the skill level he has shown. He beat the Inuzuka air readily enough and exhibited intelligence I always knew he had during the first test. He fought Orochimaru for a minute before losing. Their information is not completely accurate. Naruto edited to save extra looking at the seal. You said he was a happy-go-lucky kid who was simply more mature than most, correct? Jiraiya continued. Yes, Jiraiya, get to the point. Sarutobi said, getting frustrated. If it was about Naruto, it was probably not good. Jiraiya frowned. I met the kid today in the hot springs. He was not mid-chunin, he was high junin at lowest. His stance and his stealth were all of the highest caliber. Does he know his heritage yet? He asked, trying to make sure what Naruto had said was true. Sarutobi shook his head. No, Minato left instructions he was not to be told until he made Junin rank. Jiraiya's frown deepened. Do you have Anbu teams following his movement when he is within the village? Sarutobi nodded. Yes, in fact, I have the reports right here. He reached and grabbed reports from the two cycling teams watching Naruto. Jiraiya was now officially pissed at his sensei. Sarutobi, have you ever interrogated these teams to make sure they were watching Naruto? Sarutobi frowned and said, no, I have been too busy ever since he put the council in place. The ninja liked him more. I trusted my teams to follow their orders. Jiraiya looked at his sensei like he was crazy. Sensei, Naruto knows the Rasengan. He showed it to me. It was a completely functional one. There is only one way for him to know that if I did not teach it to him. Sarutobi's eyes widened as he took in that information. But Anbu would have noticed if he went anywhere near that forest. Jiraiya sighed in frustration. The Anbu are not actually protecting Naruto. They are falsifying the reports and not doing their job. Naruto told me himself. He called me his godfather with such venom I thought I was going to be poisoned. With his current power, I would be hard-pressed to stop him. Even if he uses Kyuubi's chakra, Sage Mode would be hard to beat him. Sarutobi's eyes widened. Is he really that strong? Jiraiya was a sensor. He could sense Naruto was hiding some pretty strong stuff. Yes, he could almost fight SCL Ninja if he had the experience. Sarutobi sighed and sat back in his chair. We will have to talk to Naruto, see if he cannot leave the house so he does not reveal his heritage. It cannot be known he is Minato's son. If it gets out, there will be riots and attacks from other countries. The villagers will deny it full force. Jiraiya was never happy with the decision to keep Naruto's parentage from him. He knew it was necessary at the time, so he did not blurt it out, but Naruto had proven himself capable of holding a secret for almost a month without anyone in the village knowing. There was no danger in letting him continue his ruse. If they helped him, the ruse would be ensured. Maybe we should let him alone. If we antagonize him, it could lead to something happening we don't want. Sarutobi shook his head. No, he must move out. I will force him if I have to. This village cannot take another war just yet. Sarutobi-sensei, I am more worried about him turning on Konoha. He sounded very angry when he talked to me. You mentioned nothing of anger or resentment about the village to me. If we push too far, you don't know what will happen. Jiraiya said. Sarutobi again shook his head. Naruto is loyal to Konoha. He will never betray it. He will see it my way. The village must be protected. Jiraiya sighed as he followed the Hokage out of his tower and into the forest. Time warp. Naruto walked out of the hot springs agitated. He was pissed at his godfather. The man could have at least shown up once in his life before now. When he does, though, he is peeping on his girlfriends. Naruto sat outside muttering for about 20 minutes before the girls came outside and the groups separated again. Kurenai, Yugao, and Katsumi could tell Naruto was agitated. But they decided they would wait until they were home to discuss it. The walk was uncomfortable because of Naruto's state, but they walked at a leisurely pace and finally arrived home. Naruto went to the porch and sat down. He started muttering until he felt 3 pairs of arms around him. What's wrong, Naru-kun? Yugao asked. You were agitated all the way home. Kurenai said. Naruto sighed and his tails came out and wrapped around the 3 females holding him. He told them everything that happened after he put the barrier back up. How he had lost his temper and told his godfather everything he knew about him. How he berated him and exposed he knew his heritage. We will have to prepare. I am sure he ran to Gigi once I left and told him. They will be here shortly to try to get us to leave. Naruto said. Katsumi spoke up. Then they will have to make us. Those seals of your father's were ingenious. I bet no one can get past them. Yugao nodded. The Yondaime was known for his seals, and unless the blood is encoded in the seals they won't be able to get in. Kurenai chimed in. Well then we best start making some dinner for our guests girls. With that the three girls rushed off to make dinner. About 20 minutes and a table full of food later the doorbell rang and Naruto went to answer it with the girls behind him, his tails and ears behind the defense mechanism as well as Katsumi's. Here goes nothing, Naruto said as he opened the door. I seriously have no problem with gay people. I have met gay relations that are much better than any male-female relations. But Naruto being preg. Come on. I know I am going to receive criticism for this, but it is getting ridiculous. I don't care if they are gay, just don't bring something that is completely against the laws of the world into the stories. But I guess that is the point of the story, huh? Anyways, my little rant is over. Sorry if I offended anyone. Well, on to my story. Sometimes the only way you can take a really good look at yourself is through somebody else's eyes. From the television show Scrubs. Chapter 11, The Hokage, Sannin, and Marriage. Naruto opened the door dressed in a kimono. He came face to face to who he had expected, the Hokage and Jiraiya. Hey Gigi, Jiraiya-san. He said with a smile, will you be joining us for dinner? The Hokage frowned. Naruto, we are here for business, not pleasure. Naruto looked at the Hokage with deadly serious eyes. I know what it is you are here for. With a deadly calm voice but switched to a happy voice, here, let's have some dinner before the unpleasantries. With that he ushered them into the compound. Naruto led his little party to the dining room and sat everyone down. Now then, Kurenai-chan, Yugao-chan, and Katsumi-chan have worked really hard to make this. Please enjoy. He saw the stares from the Hokage and Jiraiya about Katsumi. Oh, that's right, you guys haven't been introduced to Katsumi-chan yet, huh? Well, her story is very interesting but will be very long, so we will discuss it with the unpleasantries. Naruto sat down at the table with Kurenai, Yugao and Katsumi on his side with Jiraiya and the Hokage on the other side. Naruto clapped his hands and Kage Bunchins came in carrying the food. It was quite lavish. Plenty of food was spread out. Even with the shortness of the time, the girls had managed to make quite the feast. Naruto and his girls made some small talk while the Hokage and Jiraiya would input a few things. Jiraiya was feeling out of place because of Naruto. He was not very courteous to him. Course he has every right to. I basically abandoned him and didn't even check on him. Jiraiya thought to himself. Though he seems to be doing all right now. He finished with a perverted chuckle about the three women surrounding him. Naruto glared at his godfather when he heard his patented perverted chuckle. Jiraiya-san, do not look at my girlfriends with such a leer, they do not take it too kindly, he said in a sweet voice. Jiraiya came back to his senses when he was on the receiving end of 3 kiss. He chuckled nervously. Gomen, he said. The rest of the dinner finished and the KBs cleared the table and went to do the dishes. Naruto stood up and said, let's go to the living room where we can commence this, as the Naruto would say, troublesome and pointless discussion. The Hokage frowned again. This was not how he was expecting this to go. They all followed Naruto and he motioned for the Hokage and Jiraiya to take a seat before sitting on a love seat. Kurenai, Yugao and Katsumi all sat on the sofa opposite the Hokage and Jiraiya. Naruto looked at the Hokage and Jiraiya expectantly. The Hokage cleared his throat before asking, Naruto, how long have you been living here? Naruto said, after we returned with Haku. The Hokage thought for a second, so about 3 weeks. How did you find this place? Naruto's eyes darkened. Yes, 3 weeks. I found this place when I would hide when I was out on the streets. Hokage-sama. He had a little bit of venom in his voice. The Sandaime blinked, surprised at the venom directed at him and that he was not called Gigi. Why did you not inform me you had found this place? Naruto's eyes became even darker. Because Gigi would be happy for me, but Hokage-sama would be forced to banish me from my own birthright. One that should never have been denied me when I was suffering. Kurenai, Yugao, and Katsumi were agitated with the waves of menace coming from Naruto. They were so in tune with him they could feel his rumbling emotions. Jiraiya and the Hokage were less affected. Sarutobi covered his eyes. Yes, I regret your childhood, Naruto-kun, but you cannot stay here. If word got out about this, he was cut off. I had no childhood, Hokage-sama, you know that as well as I do. When I was 7 I had the same maturity as a fully grown man. Do not belittle what you know. Word about me got out. Your own Anbu have yet to discover this arrangement, otherwise you would have been at my doorstep the second the report hit your table. Either you are not paying attention or your Anbu are not doing their job correctly. Naruto retorted. The Hokage was surprised, but then he thought about what Naruto said and agreed that his Anbu needed a talking to. Regardless, what if someone saw you come in here? No one is supposed to be living here. The village cannot afford another war, Naruto-kun, you know this. You must not stay here. You may claim this when you're of Junin rank. Sarutobi said with a note of finality in his voice, like that settled things. Naruto looked at the Hokage and shook his head slightly. Hokage-sama, do you really think you can keep this from me? The seals around this place alone prevent anyone who does not know about its existence hidden. Me going into the forest with Kurenai, Yugao or Katsumi would be seen as nothing more than a makeout session. Your fears are unfounded, but this village cannot afford another war. You are right about that. Not with you as Hokage. Sarutobi bristled. Jiraiya was stunned. Jiraiya admitted that his sensei was a powerful ninja, but Naruto seemed to have a point. Sarutobi said in a deadly calm voice, what exactly are you insinuating? Be careful, Naruto-sama. Sensing the ki from Naruto's room. Kurenai and Yugao shivered, seeing part of the Kami no Shinobi being unleashed. Katsumi merely licked her lips at how Naruto was remaining calm. Naruto looked unfazed and responded, you are not fit to be Hokage. Now hold on a minute, Jiraiya started, but Naruto cut him off. Not now, the village needs a new guiding light. Your policies are nice. You bring the people happiness, but your ninja take advantage of it. Your own Anbu have been disobeying you. The council has way too much power because you are not going to live long enough to put whatever practices you put into action through. The council undermines your authority at every turn and gives you so much paperwork you cannot even get reports from what should be the most important part of your village, your Jinchuriki. Jiraiya had his mouth hanging open while Sarutobi looked like he had been struck in the heart. Naruto looked down. I am sorry to tell you that, Gigi, but it is true and you know it. You are the strongest ninja besides Jiraiya within these walls, but you are too old for the cage hat with the council undermining you. We need a new guiding light. This situation only proves what I am saying. You did not even know your Jinchuriki and biggest secret was living in an old Hokage's house. If someone would have been smart enough to break the security seals, they would have made off with all of Konoha's jutsu except the Hiraishin and Rasengan. Sarutobi looked down, his age catching him unawares. I know, Naruto-kun, if the council supported me it would be a different story, but at the current time we have no one else fit to be our cage. The only people strong enough are Jiraiya here, and he must be on the move for our spies. The only other one who could be is Tsunade, but I haven't heard from her in years. Naruto looked at his Gigi and said, please, I know I shouldn't be living here, but it is the only place I feel safe. No one will find out about my heritage until I become Chunin and claim my clan seat. The Namikaze seat will be incorporated into my new clan. I would like to take his name, but I want to be known for my own prowess, not his. You should not hold such a grudge against Jiraiya-san. Naruto-sama, please try to make amends. Kamikaze said. Kamikaze knew his wielder had a kind heart and would be able to forgive Jiraiya if Jiraiya proved himself. Naruto looked at Jiraiya. Do you have any idea where Tsunade-san is? Jiraiya shook his head. Not usually. She has escaped my spies pretty readily. She was supposedly last seen near Tanzaku-gai about 2 days ago though. Naruto nodded. Then let's go take a look around and see if we can't find her. She needs to come back. But why has she not? Sarutobi and Jiraiya looked down. She has lost much within Konoha. Sarutobi said. Naruto scowled. And the rest of the ninja have not. Or the civilians who are friends or even lovers of ninja. We die every day and loss is a lifestyle we must bear. There is no reason to be wallowing in grief for more than 13 years. Jiraiya looked up. She lost her younger brother first in the war and then fell in love with a young man named Dan and lost him as well. You have never lost something so precious. Do not patronize her grief. Naruto looked at his godfather with steely eyes. You are correct, I have never lost, luckily enough. I had never had before I became a genin though. Do not compare me to her. I said she is a ninja. If she is not capable of moving on, she will waste away when others need her. Jiraiya said. That is true, however, she will never take the job even if we found her. Her younger brother and lover both desired to be Hokage. Once she gave them her grandfather's necklace, the necklace of the first, they died shortly afterwards. Naruto's eyes softened. A noble sacrifice for their village, but is she not dishonoring them? She is allowing the village they loved so much to be in pain when she could be preventing it. Sarutobi looked up. Would you go with Jiraiya to find her, Naruto-kun? I know you could defeat any of the Chunin applicants and don't really need to train past keeping in shape. I would like Tsunade back. I feel something will happen during the finals with Orochimaru having attacked Sasuke. Jiraiya flinched at the question and looked with Naruto with a small amount of hope in his eyes. Naruto's eyes went steely again. Jiraiya-san, I am not happy with you. Let me make it perfectly clear, I hold no love for you. You should have been protecting me when you had the chance, not trying to make up with me after the damage is done. I may never love you, but I can put my past behind me long enough to give you a shot at like. Do not betray my trust. To few do I give a second chance and there is no third with me. Should you lose this, you can forget ever having a relations with me. Naruto's eyes softened as he looked at his godfather. I had to vent when I saw you. I took my rage out when I yelled at you within the hot springs. I will try not to hold too much of a grudge, but it is hard for me to let people in Jiraiya-san. Please, I would like to get to know my only remaining link to my family. Naruto looked at the old man with some fire in his eyes. I probably sounded like I held a grudge against Konoha, did I not? Jiraiya nodded his head and said, that was what I was afraid of. Naruto nodded and said, I will never attack Konoha unless it attacks me. I will protect it, not for the village, but for the few people within it, I feel, are worth protecting. Never fear me, I will not turn against Konoha unless it turns its back on me. Sarutobi nodded his head, his small doubt vanishing after his declaration. Naruto may hold grudges, but he always kept his word. Of that nothing was questionable. Very well, Naruto-kun, as much as I want to remove you, it seems you have convinced me it is okay. Would you find Tsunade and bring her back? If anyone can, it would be you. Naruto nodded and said, we have one last thing to discuss. Since you have been so open, but this needs to remain between the 6 of us or Tsunade should she become Hokage. All of them present nodded and Naruto continued, the seal was broken. I have only one small piece of the seal left. Once Orochimaru blocked Kyuubi with the Gogyo Fuin, I had to rip part of the seal off to keep myself alive. I did it right before you. He pointed to the Hokage, who had a shocked look on his face, released it. I would like to tell you the rest of my story now. So Naruto explained to the Hokage how he could speak to the Kyuubi and left out how Katsumi was the Kyuubi. He explained how she acted and how she helped him. How she was a she and how she helped him then left him alone. Why she attacked Konoha and how his father suspected foul play. Once it was all done he looked at the shocked expressions of the Hokage and Jiraiya and chuckled, "She is quite safe. She has done nothing to incur our hate and simply wishes to live outside of me." The Hokage and Jiraiya looked at each other before looking back at Naruto and Sarutobi spoke up, "How can you be sure, Naruto-kun?" Naruto smiled and said, "Because she loves me." At that the Hokage's and Jiraiya's faces dropped and Katsumi, Kurenai and Yugao laughed. They had been holding in since Naruto started. Besides she has been out almost 3 days now, and she has not attacked Konoha or yourselves, why should you be scared? If she had any harmful notions, she would have killed the entire village. The Hokage and Jiraiya snapped out of it and they quickly connected the dots before looking at Katsumi. "You're Kyuubi," Sarutobi said. Katsumi stopped laughing and nodded, showing her tails and ears. "Yes, Hokage-san, and everything Naruto-kun has said is true. I bear no grudge against your village beyond what they did to hurt Naruto-kun when he was younger. It is considered taboo to hurt children in the demon realm, so you can imagine the horror I felt when Naruto-kun showed me his memories." The Hokage nodded. Naruto looked confused before asking, "So no freaking out? No kill the demon?" The Hokage shook his head, "You said it yourself, if she wished us dead she would have killed us already. Though I am curious as to why you're blonde and not a red head in your eyes." Katsumi giggled and said, "That is because I am a lightning fox. I only appeared red because when a demon gets protective of their most precious things their Yuki turns crimson. It is the reason Naruto-kun's Yuki is crimson with flecks of gold. If he ever decides to fight for the fun of it his Yuki will be purely golden, but his reason for fighting right now is to protect, specifically protect his loved ones, so his tails are crimson with golden streaks." Jiraiya said, "Tails?" Naruto sighed, he had hoped to save that. "Yes, tails. And release them from his defense mechanism. They spilled out and his fox ears showed." Sarutobi looked stunned before both he and Jiraiya jumped back and adopted fighting stances. "Where is Naruto?" Jiraiya shouted. Naruto rolled his eyes. "Guys, do you really think Kurenai and Yugao would be sitting so close to Katsumi and myself during dinner if I was not Naruto? Seriously, sit back down and discuss this. My defense mechanism has always been in place, hence the reason you have never seen these. I was changed into a Hanyu when Katsumi-chan was sealed inside me. Even the Byakugan could not see past this mechanism." Sarutobi and Jiraiya looked wary before asking, "Prove it." Naruto sighed and left the room. He walked back into it holding Kamikaze's dual blades. "Proof enough?" he asked. They nodded and sat back down. "So how did you get your body back, Katsumi-san?" Sarutobi said. Even Naruto had his eyes on her now. Now that he thought about it, he had never asked her. Katsumi chuckled and said, "That's easy. It was sealed in this compound." Everyone blinked before laughing. "That makes perfect sense," Naruto commented. "So would you like to become a kunoichi, Katsumi-san?" Sarutobi asked. Katsumi shook her head. "Not too much paperwork. I would much rather be Naruto-kun's Nin-fox." Everyone looked at her confused until she turned into a little blonde fox with one tail. Kurenai immediately grabbed her and hugged her with stars in her eyes. She and Yugao began petting Katsumi and she started to purr. The Hokage cleared his throat before saying, "Yes, well, okay, that would work. I will get you a headband for your neck though, is that okay?" Katsumi nodded while her tail wagged happily at the attention she was receiving. Naruto said, "If that is all, I believe it is time for bed. We can leave tomorrow morning, Jiraiya-san." The Hokage and Jiraiya nodded before Naruto led them back outside. Tomorrow morning 7 a.m. Konoha's gate. With that he shut his doors and walked back inside to cuddle with his loves. The next morning Naruto was heading to the gate after giving his girls some kisses. He decided that Katsumi needed to stay with Kurenai and Yugao so they could get to know each other and Naruto could focus on Jiraiya while they traveled. He arrived at the gate to find the Hokage and Jiraiya waiting for him. The Sandaime stepped forward. Naruto-kun, when you come back with or without Tsunade, I need to discuss something with you. Naruto nodded, already having an idea about what it was. Jiraiya-san, you said it was Tanzaku guy, right? Jiraiya nodded and said, yep, so if you're ready let's get going, the sooner we get there the better. The Hokage said, very well, your mission is to find and retrieve Tsunade Senju so she can be debriefed and either retired or reinstated. Dismissed. With that, Jiraiya and Naruto set out the gates of Konoha. Time skip 2 days. Naruto had managed not to be overly mean to Jiraiya. He was not exactly nice, but he held a little bit of conversation with him. He asked about his spy network and how his life on the road was. What his specialty was as a ninja and what his elemental affinity was. Little things. Naruto stayed away from when he would visit the village to avoid his anger. He did not ask about his parents yet. So Tsunade was your teammate, what does she look like? Naruto asked, trying to keep conversation going while they traveled. Jiraiya took a picture out and handed it to Naruto. It showed a woman in her 20s with big S, blonde hair, and a diamond on her forehead. She is my age but uses an advanced henge to look younger. So any hobbies or something we can use to track her? Naruto asked. Jiraiya chuckled. Well, she is a big alcoholic and loves to gamble, though she almost always loses. Her nickname in the betting ring is the legendary sucker. Naruto chuckled at that. Well then it shouldn't take too much to find her. Jiraiya turned to Naruto and said, she has managed to evade me each time I got close, don't you? It will be easy. Naruto nodded and said, well, let's get a move on, I want to get back and look at the Hiraishin a bit more before the finals. Jiraiya nodded and they stepped it up a bit. Tanzaku Gai. 1 day later. Naruto and Jiraiya arrived at the entrance to Tanzaku Gai and looked around. So we should start with the biggest casinos and then end with the bars, Jiraiya-san. Jiraiya nodded and Naruto went to move off before Jiraiya grabbed his shoulder and held out his hand. Give me your money, I don't want you wasting your fortune in the casinos just because you can. With sincerity in his voice. Naruto raised an eyebrow and said, you are the wealthiest person on the planet with those perverted books you sell. If you did not bring money that is on your head, you are not getting mine. Nice try though. Naruto set off to find Tsunade. Jiraiya looked at Naruto as he walked off and muttered, stupid Gaki, too smart for his own good. About 2 hours later, Naruto wandered into the biggest casino in town, which seemed to be hosting a tournament. He looked around for a little bit before checking out the tournament. Once he approached the tournament table, he saw exactly who he was looking for, Tsunade. He quickly formulated a plan to get her to talk to him. Okay, I am not a poker guy and am making this up to go along with the story, so just play along even if this isn't legal in the world. He walked up to an official that was watching from the sidelines and asked, hey, can anyone join this tournament? The official looked at the youngster and said, aren't you a little young? Naruto pointed to his Hitai and said, no. The official shrugged his shoulders and said, yes, anyone can join as long as it is still going on, but the buy-in is 100,000 ryu. If you can afford that, you can play. But you had best hurry, there is only one spot open and the tournament ends soon. Naruto nodded. Where do I go to sign in? The official hid his surprise that the kid had that much money and said, over there at that table. Pointing to a table on the far end of the room. Good luck, Naruto-sama, Kamikaze said in regards to his plan. Naruto thanked the man and proceeded over to the table. Once he had reached it, he signed in and pulled out the money to play. His money was quickly counted and he was in the last spot. He looked around the table and spotted his opponents. Tsunade was sitting directly across from him. He had hidden his Hitai so she could not see it. There were 4 other players. A man with glees, aka glees for now. A man with a crazy tattoo crawling up his neck to his ear, aka tattoo for now. The last guy was one wearing a crazy hat, aka hatter for now. Finally, there was another woman who had fiery red hair, aka red for now. Easy no. Naruto picked his card up and noticed it was Tattoo's turn to be dealer, so he set down half the minimum bet, 500 Ryu. Hatter set down 1000 Ryu. Everyone else called and they looked at their whole cards. Naruto had 2 8s, the 8 of clubs and hearts. The dealer discarded the top card of the deck and placed the next 3 in front of the players. There was a 8 of spades, a king of hearts and a ace of hearts. Naruto looked at the cards and looked at his opponents. These guys were good. Naruto could barely tell what they were thinking. Tattoo raised to 1500 Ryu and Hatter and Red called. Naruto raised to 2000 Ryu and everyone else called. The dealer discarded another card and set down the flop. It was a 10 of hearts. Everyone called. Until Tsunade raised to 3000 Ryu. Naruto raised an eyebrow, but Hatter and Glees folded. The rest called. The dealer discarded the last card and put down the river. It was a 9 of clubs. Everyone showed their hand to finding Tsunade had a royal flush. She won. She furrowed her eyebrows, not looking pleased at all. The next hour went on like that, Naruto winning a few, Tsunade winning a few, and her getting agitated until the end when it was only Tsunade, Glees, and Naruto. This is the last deal of the tournament. The dealer said and dealt the whole cards. Naruto had a ace of hearts and a ace of spades. Naruto set down 500 Ryu and Glees put down 1000. Tsunade raised to 1500 and Naruto and Glees called. The dealer discarded the top card and placed the 3 cards down. A king of clubs, a 3 of clubs, and a jack of hearts. Tsunade raised again to 2500 Ryu. Glees folded and Naruto called. The dealer discarded another card and placed the next card down, which was the ace of clubs. Tsunade went all in and Naruto looked at the money and cards. He put his plan into action. How about a different bet, Tsunade-san? Naruto said. Tsunade quirked an eyebrow but said, and what would you propose? Naruto looked at his hand one more time, showing some nervousness. If you win, you keep the money and take the patent to one of my seals. Flashing the patent to his anti-rape seal. Tsunade's eyes flashed for the money that incorporated. Keep in mind, she may know he is from Konoha, but his identity has been kept a secret about being the inventor. If I win, you keep the money and go on a date with me. Tsunade immediately said, done. The dealer discarded the last card and flipped the last card, which turned out to be the ace of diamonds. Naruto smirked. Whatcha got, Tsunade-hime? Tsunade looked at him before revealing a full house. Naruto smiled brighter. 4 of a kind. Thank you for playing, he said with a flourish. Tsunade frowned and told him to meet her at the hotel on the other side of town at 7 that night for their date. Naruto nodded and left the money for her to pick up. He had plenty more in his scroll. Naruto sent a KB to find Jiraiya while he followed Tsunade. He knew she was known to step out on her debts, so why not a date? His KB found Jiraiya drunk in a bar with prostitutes hanging all over him. His KB dispelled and Naruto scoffed at his godfather's actions. He waited on the opposite side of the street on the roof of the building until about 6:45. He was a little surprised she had not run, but he was not going to complain. He had left a KB about 30 minutes ago so he could freshen up, and now he was on his way to the lobby to grab Tsunade. He walked into the hotel and asked for her to be paged. Once she had, it took about 10 minutes, but she came down the stairs in her usual attire of a blue-green jacket with a white wraparound shirt that showed the valley of her breeks. A black sash-like belt. With black pants and sandals. I expected you to try and run away, Tsunade-hime. Naruto said as she walked into the room. Tsunade smirked. If you know this much about me, I wonder what else you know. How about we get to the restaurant before exchanging the pleasantries? Naruto nodded and led the way, purposefully leaving his back open to her so she knew she should trust him a little. He walked about 3 blocks away before entering a small restaurant with a bar. Well, I figured for a starting date a small place would be nice, Naruto said. Tsunade liked the kids' style. It allowed for their attire and they would be left in peace for the talking they were going to be doing. Not bad. They sat down and ordered their drink and food, making small talk all the while. They ate their food in peace before ordering chilled sake for a dessert. Tsunade decided to cut the crap after they had eaten. Okay, spill it, brat. Why the hell do you know so much about me and what exactly do you want from me? Naruto raised an eyebrow before reaching into a pocket slowly and pulling out his Hittite. Remember this, he said. Tsunade's eyes widened before she said, I will never go back to that godforsaken village. Naruto looked at her with sad eyes. You don't even know who you're talking to, do you? Tsunade did a double take at the sadness that had not been in his eyes moments ago. Naruto, right? What's your last name? Naruto looked at her harshly before stating, think about it, Tsunade. You know who I am. Tsunade studied his face before recoiling and saying, Naruto, the Jin. She stopped herself before she broke the law. She may not have been there, but she could still have an execution waiting for her. Naruto nodded before saying, I know everything about the Kyuubi. The village needs you, Tsunade. You cannot ignore it. You are a ninja of Konoha. Tsunade's eyes spoke rage before saying, I will not go back to Konoha. If you know this much about me, you must be close to Sarutobi-sensei. He must have explained to you why I would not return. Naruto nodded sadly, yes, but do you know what I told him? Tsunade shook her head in anger. Naruto continued in barely a whisper, that you are a ninja and as such you have 2 options, get over it, or quit. Tsunade was stunned. What the hell did this brat know of pain and suffering and loss? As ninja, our lives revolve around loss, Tsunade-san. You are dishonoring your brother and your lover by allowing the village they loved so much that they were willing to give their lives for it to crumble with the old Hokage who should have never been reinstated. You know this. You also know you are the only one who can become the Godime. Naruto responded. The Hokage is a fool's job, only an idiot would want it. She retorted. Calm down, Naruto-sama, she does not know her words. Kamikaze spoke up. Naruto's anger flared and his eyes flashed to his battle state for a second, causing Tsunade to recoil. Do not insult the Hokages. They gave their lives in defense of something they believed in and something they held precious. It is not a fool's job, it is a job of protection. A job taken to uphold the morals of the village and those past. You hold the dreams of the entire village and of those who passed in service to it. I do not love the village. I do not love the people in general, but I protect those walls because of the few people worth it. I do not care if I have to drag your back into Konoha kicking and screaming to get you either reinstated or removed from the ninja charter. You know well what will happen if you are removed from active duty. Konoha will lose one of its Sannin. A defense against possible attacks, even though you have not been there in over 13 years. You will not be able to travel anymore because of your bingo book status. You will be restricted to Fire Country and your debt will catch you. You have little choice but to come with me or I will force you. Naruto laid his money down and waited for Tsunade's response. Tsunade's eyes narrowed. This little pipsqueak thought he could take her on. Fine. One last bet then. You fight me. If I manage to knock you out, you forget you ever saw me. If you win, I will go back to Konoha with you. Naruto chuckled. She didn't know who she was messing with. Very well, let's take this outside, shall we? Naruto and Tsunade walked outside the restaurant and outside the town into the surrounding forest and found a clearing. Naruto had sent a KB to Jiraiya to tell him of the situation, and Jiraiya had told him to not fight Tsunade, that he was strong but not that strong. Naruto scoffed. She was powerful and experienced, of that Naruto had no doubt, but she was way out of practice with his current seal up to 8. If he released it, he was as fast as the Yondaime. Experience and power only work if you can hit the guy. Naruto would have a death blow ready before she could awaken from her 13-year rut. Naruto drew Sarasa and Denki and took his stance. "Are you ready?" he asked. Tsunade took a stance and said, "Come on." Naruto muttered, "Kai," and disappeared. Fast. Tsunade thought then she was blown back by a punch to the gut. She stood up looking at Naruto, who was bouncing on his toes. "Damn, I am way out of practice for that to hurt that much." Naruto smirked. He disappeared again, but this time Tsunade managed to dodge his thrust and attempted to punch him, but he just dodged it using his natural flexibility. Tsunade's eyes widened. What the hell is this kid? He managed to dodge me. She was a taijutsu expert. Not much of a master, but her super strength was nigh unbeatable if she landed a hit. She continued trying to land hits and dodging his attacks for a full 3 minutes before he slipped, and she tried to capitalize on the open guard. She thrust her hand forward and hit his head with her fist, sending him flying back. He hit the tree and went poof. What the cage bunshin? She felt cold steel press against her neck, and she turned her eyes to regard Naruto with his swords crisscrossing her neck. "I win," he said, and waited for her nod. Tsunade nodded, ashamed she was beat by this child, and asked, "What rank are you?" Naruto looked at her. "Genin." Why? Tsunade was floored. She was just schooled by a freaking genin. Naruto sheathed his swords and said, "Let's go get your stuff and Shizune-san and head to go find Jiraiya-san." Tsunade blinked. "You're here with Jiraiya?" Naruto nodded and said, "Kinda. As soon as we got here to look for you, he went off to get drunk and party with girls instead of actually looking for you." Tsunade nodded. "Same old Jiraiya. I wonder how Sarutobi-sensei is." Naruto looked at her as they walked. "He is fine, but he is getting too old for his job." Tsunade nodded, and they got to her hotel. Once explaining things to Shizune, she was overjoyed to be heading back to the village. Time skip. Next morning. Jiraiya was following Naruto's KB, who had shown up at dawn to lead him to Naruto. The KB didn't say much beyond just to follow him. Jiraiya was still dealing with a hangover from last night. He saw 3 figures waiting by the gates and figured Naruto had acquired some traveling friends. He giggled perversely. Once he got closer, however, he noticed Tsunade and Shizune. Naruto looked at Jiraiya and said, "Thank you for nothing, you useless pervert. Spending all your money and time getting drunk and laid while I did all the work. Is this what you did when you left the village after my birth?" Jiraiya looked down and didn't comment. "I thought so. Please, if we ever go on a mission again, try to stay focused. This was not a good experience with you for me," Naruto said. Tsunade raised her eyebrow as Jiraiya took the scolding. Naruto looked at the group and said, "Okay, well, this was much shorter than expected, but I am happy. We should arrive back in Konoha in 3 days' time. Gives me plenty of time to train for the Chunin exams. Let's get moving." They all took to the trees, heading home. Time skip. 1 day. Tsunade had been thinking about it, and the more she did, the less made sense. How the hell was this guy so powerful? Sure, he had the Kyuubi in him, but that did not grant him the speed of the Yondaimes. Plus, why did Jiraiya take that scolding back there? She decided to question Jiraiya. She dropped back so Naruto wouldn't hear and spoke to Jiraiya. "Jiraiya, what the hell is going on? Who is this kid and how the hell is he so powerful? Why do you let him talk to you like that?" she asked. Jiraiya looked at her and said, "He is a person who has been mistreated most of his life by almost the entire village. As for how he is so powerful, that sword on his back is sentient. He is a seals master rivaling me and Minato, and as for the last thing, I will tell you if you stay in Konoha long enough." Tsunade huffed and sped back up. She was going to get some answers out of her sensei. Time skip. Konoha. They arrived at Konoha on time. Few people were stupid enough to try to fight 3 people with huge reserves. They immediately made their way to the Hokage Tower and entered. Naruto walked into the Hokage's office with Tsunade, Shizune, and Jiraiya right behind him. Mission accomplished, Gigi, he said. Sarutobi smiled as he saw Tsunade. Ah, it is good to see you today, Tsunade, it has been too long. Tsunade smiled slightly and embraced her sensei. It is good to see you too. How are you? Sarutobi chuckled. As okay as one can be with doing all this work. He motioned to the 3-cage Bunshin doing work. Gigi, you just told her the secret. Naruto mock glared at Sarutobi and Sarutobi chuckled. Tsunade was confused yet again. This kid called the Hokage old man and scolded Jiraiya. Goddamn, who the hell are you, kid? You can scold the 2 strongest people in Konoha and not bat an eye. Naruto's eyes darkened. If you wish to know, ask them. You have yet to earn my story or respect. Tsunade's eyes flashed. You will respect me. I was fighting battles before you were a thought in your father's head, and if I become Hokage you will have no choice. Naruto's eyes went red. My respect is never given. Even the Hokage had to earn it. I call him Gigi as a sign of respect. Perhaps you will gain my respect with you in the Hokage's seat, but at this current time I would only respect the hat on your head, not you. With that he turned from a fuming Tsunade. Naruto looked at the Sandaime. What did you want to talk to me about again, Gigi? The Sandaime looked at Tsunade and said, could you, Shizune, and Jiraiya leave please? This is a private matter and you don't really have the clearance to know this yet. Tsunade turned around and stormed out with Shizune and Jiraiya on her heels. The Sandaime put a silencing jutsu up and turned to Naruto. I have a feeling you already know what this is about. Naruto smirked. Oh, I wonder if I do. He said while turning his nose up and putting his finger on his chin. Sarutobi chuckled as he sat down. It has to do with the treaty with Kiri. You did such a wonderful job and expressed such power. They wish to solidify our alliance a little bit more than just on paper. He said, beating around the bush, not sure how he would take this. Naruto looked at the Hokage and said, so they wish a political marriage. The Sandaime chuckled at Naruto's tact. Hi. He answered. Naruto thought for a moment before saying, and who would be on their side? Obviously I was chosen as the candidate, otherwise I would not know of this until the rest of the council. Sarutobi smiled. Yes, indeed you were requested and the council would have almost no problem with this as you are not from a very prominent clan yet. It is convenient a little for your wife's situation, also for the village so none of our main clans lose a bloodline. Naruto nodded, having expected this. So who is it they are asking me to marry? Gigi spit it out. The Sandaime sighed before saying, Mei Terumi. Naruto blinked. So they are offering their own cage with 2 bloodlines to a less known just formed clan with a sense enhancing bloodline to marry a woman who has 2 bloodlines and is their strongest shinobi. Truthfully, he knew Mei got the council to agree knowing some things about him that others did not, but she did not know about him being a Jinchuriki or the fact he was a Hanyu. Does she know about Kyuubi? He asked. Sarutobi nodded. When she suggested you and would not relent, I was forced to tell her. If she was an ally, I was going to tell her about it anyways. It is custom to do so. At least it is in my story as such. They know Suna has a Jinchuriki, just not who he is. Naruto cringed, so she still went along with it. Sarutobi looked at Naruto with an incredulous look and said, if anything, she insisted even more vehemently after hearing such a thing. She said it only proved you a more worthy man. Naruto sighed. Very well, I will talk with Mei-chan when she comes into town for the finals. Please let her know I wish to speak with her and send Anbu to my fake house so I know she is in town. I accept the marriage proposal as long as the alliance goes through, but I need to talk to Mei to see how far this will go on a personal level. Sarutobi nodded. Very well, thank you for your help, Naruto-kun. Naruto nodded and said, no thank you, Gigi. I am sorry for hurting your feelings so much in the past few days, but this village needs to change. Sarutobi looked at his grandson in all but blood and hugged him. I know Naruto-kun, thank you for helping this old man see the light and helping me bring this village to a new age. Naruto nodded and turned and left the room eager to get home. Tsunade walked into the office after Naruto had left and looked at her sensei crying slightly. She was a little stunned. Sarutobi quickly wiped his tears away and said, now on to you. Tsunade cut him off. I want to see that boy's file and everything you have on him. Sarutobi frowned. You are not going to like what you see, he warned. I need to know who the hell that kid is to beat me so bad. Tsunade retorted. Very well, the Sandaime said and pulled Naruto's file out and handed it to Tsunade. He started his story with the silencing jutsu up and Shizune and Jiraiya in the room. Naruto rushed home eager to see his loves and tell them of the political maneuvering Mei did. He arrived at his home and opened his doors. He ran into his compound and shouted, I am home. Katsumi found him first and threw herself into his arms and got a chaste kiss on the lips. Welcome home Naruto-kun. Next was Yugao. Right as he let go of Katsumi, she threw herself as well and Naruto licked her lower lip until she was jelly in his hands with him holding her up. Hello Naru-kun. Kurenai walked up to the trio and said, what, nothing for me? Naruto smirked and moved faster than she expected. She let a little eep when he grabbed her in a bridal carry and kissed her while maging her tongue. What a welcome. I love you Megami-chan, Murasaki Harem. How was your time finding out about Katsumi-chan? Kurenai answered while still in his arms as they walked to the living room. It was interesting. She is just like a normal girl really. Just with a bit of a bloodlust and more of a protective streak. Naruto chuckled at the blush Katsumi had. Well, I am glad to hear you girls can get along. But we have something else we need to talk about. Seeing their raised eyebrows, he said, well, it is really talking with Katsumi-chan. I already talked about this with Megami and Harem. But I want to confirm what you girls think. They all settled into the sofa. Naruto sighed as he was around his loves again. Okay, I was just informed Kiri wanted to form a political marriage with Konoha. I am sure you can guess who was chosen for our village. They all stiffened and looked at him. Can you guess who was chosen from Kiri? Yugao spoke up hopefully. Mei-chan. Naruto nodded and all the girls giggled happily. Naruto was a little shocked. Did you girls expect this? They all nodded and Katsumi spoke up. We had discussed it when you left. We could tell Mei was planning something like that when you mentioned she was in the village during the exams. That was the only reason we could think she came personally for. We are happy we could tell she holds some sort of feelings to you. Naruto nodded and said, I want to talk to her privately about her feelings. If they are strong enough, I will tell her almost everything. She already knows about Kyuubi but not Katsumi. She doesn't know about me being a Hanyu either. So if she wishes to truly join us, then she will need to know. All of the girls nodded and Naruto said, I know it is only 5, but I am going to go take a bath and then head to bed. 3 days of traveling are taxing. All the girls nodded and got up, letting Naruto walk off. Once he did, they turned to each other and they all had the same glint in their eyes. Poor Naruto. What am I thinking? Lucky bastard. Naruto climbed tiredly into his bed. He slept in the middle of the bed and spread out so the girls could take their normal positions when they decided to join him. He looked sleepily across the room and froze. The 3 girls were standing there, their tops gone and wearing their favorite color panties. Kurenai jumped onto his chest this night and used it as a pillow as she rubbed her S over his stomach. Katsumi took Kurenai's usual place on his right side. Yugao took her usual place on the left and pushed his arm into her generous bosom. Good night Naru-kun, Naruto-kun, they chorused. Naruto chuckled and said, good night Megami-chan, Murasaki Harem, Kuhi-sama queen. Now for the long-awaited finals to begin. I know I had quite a bit happen during the break. A lot of explanations and things. I had hoped to do a little more with Tsunade's mission, but it felt appropriate to bring her in, so I will probably be making a mission after the Chunin exams. Sensor Array was inspired by Pokemaster 12. Go check out his stories. Now for the poll. Holy crap, I love you guys, I got such a turnout. I will probably be taking it down in a few days, so those of you who haven't put your input, hurry on over to my page. Dream as if you'll live forever. Live as if you'll die today. James Dean. Chapter 12, Feelings, Dates, and Finals. Time skip 1 week before the finals. Naruto was in his training grounds. He had been poring over the Haraishin technique his father had left him. He knew it was going to be hard to do this technique, but he was positive he could. The main problem was learning how to do the seal. It was very complex. The basics of the seal was not summoning as most would use. It was not even a modification on the Shunshin to make it go faster. No, it would bend space and put the point on his plane right next to where he wanted to go. In this case, the kunai. It really was ingenious. To think about it easier, his father compared it to a piece of paper in his notes about the technique. If you are on one end of the paper and your enemy is at the other end, the seal bent the paper until you were standing next to your enemy. The ingenious part about it was the portal it opened for the user could not be used by anyone other than the one who made the seal because of the blood array set within it. This was all hidden by a minor seal which hid the original array with a fake one covering it. Only the user could disable it because of the blood array set within this one as well. Minato was not taking any chances that someone could possibly look at the array if he missed a kunai. Though he was meticulous in collecting his kunai after a battle according to Kushina's diary. Now where did the resistance seal come into play with all of this? Well, the Yondaime had made that up so that way Jiraiya would not bug him about the seal. Others had attempted to steal seals from him, but Minato had kept the Haraishin scroll inside a blood seal on Kushina's body, only unlockable with his blood. The resistance seal was important to toughen the body because not just anyone could do space-time jutsu, but it was not totally necessary. Following a body hardening practice, anyone could technically do the technique. Just to do it thousands of times, as Minato did to take down armies, did take quite the toll on the body. He had already completed his own Haraishin array. However, he had decided to take it a step further. He incorporated a sensor array within the seal so that he could sense chakra signatures within 10 feet of the kunai, and he could determine where he should attack when he steps through the portal. He had a kunai ready for Mei if she should prove true to her intentions. He had added a warning seal on hers though. If she charged chakra into the seal, a seal would alert Naruto to her distress and he would know she needed his help. The problem he was running into was the execution. His father had left him a few blank tri-prong kunai for him to practice with and left him blueprints for making some more for himself. The tri-prong kunai were needed for the longer handle. The blades were sharper than most and cut easier. A regular kunai with a longer handle would be unbalanced, but with the added weight for the tri-prong it balanced it. He was wondering why his father had a yellow streak when he used it. He was pretty sure it had something to do with his elemental affinity, but according to Jiraiya he was wind nature not lightning, so why was the streak yellow? He decided to ask Jiraiya. As much as he disliked the idea of going to the pervert for help, he was the only one with the knowledge to help him. Jiraiya had not endeared himself to Naruto as of yet. To Naruto he did not even seem to be trying, except that one time he came over to try and train him. He had offered the toad summoning contract, but Naruto just summoned a 5-tailed kitsune who simply beat the shit out of Jiraiya for leering at her. He had offered to help complete the Rasengan. Naruto had already attempted this and was sure he could finish the technique in a few days, so he declined the offer and said if he needed help he would ask. Needless to say, 2 days later Naruto had a fully powered Futen, Rasengan usable in battle. It would take a few more seconds to form, but it had twice the cutting power of the original. He had created his first S-rank technique. Finally, He had attempted to offer his ice stance on Hiraishin, but Naruto had been in the middle of making his own seal, and with that Jiraiya could not be able to help since it must be unique to each user. So, Jiraiya had done nothing else and sulked off at not being able to help his godson. The village had been ecstatic to hear of Tsunade's return. No one attributed the return to Naruto, but he did not care. He wanted the villagers to feel guilty, but he was not going to grovel for their recognition anymore. Rumors had been floating about of her becoming the Godime. Naruto hoped these were true. There was no one else really fit for the cage hat until someone in his generation took it. The years in between the Sannin and now had not been too kind to Konoha. Any of their potential cages had been ransacked by the previous war or the Kyuubi attack. Any of the few strong enough to claim the title had mental problems that took away from their candidacy. They had strong ninja, of that Naruto was sure, but their mental facilities had been damaged by the previous events. Naruto was not aiming to be Hokage. He was hoping to lead a normal Junin life. Take a few teams, train them, have kids, then probably leave Konoha once he got to be older and protect his clan from the shadows. However, if the hat was offered to him and he saw no one else fit to protect the village, he would take the mantle up to protect the village he had declared his home. His people he might not care for, but the village as a whole was his home. No matter what he said, he did not want it to suffer. He held little love for it, but he did hold a sense of kins with it as he had lived here his whole life. Naruto sighed and decided to head inside. He was expecting Mei to show up in about 4 days, considering the finals were in a week. He really hoped she held actual feelings for him. She was another girl he could not seem to get out of his head. Ever since he had met her in the Hokage's office the day after he saved Kurenai, he had her in the back of his mind. The same as Kurenai and Yugao when he finally met her. Naruto went inside and decided to ask Katsumi something after taking a shower. His team had decided not to practice together since the finals were close and Shino and he might fight each other. Kurenai was out helping Hinata and Yugao was on patrol duty for today, so it was just him and Katsumi on the grounds. He had been bouncing something around in his head ever since Mei had asked for a marriage. He finished his shower and headed to the forest where Katsumi liked to sunbath in kit form. He had enjoyed her form when she would play around. He was capable of shapeshifting too, but he was so used to his human form the fox form was a little less appealing. She was quite the little trickster in that form though. It seemed to bring her foxy qualities a little bit more to the surface. He walked into Katsumi's usual clearing to finding her with a ear-ed in his direction, knowing he was coming. Katsumi-chan, can I ask you something? I have a feeling you know something you didn't necessarily let on about. Naruto said. Katsumi simply stretched and transformed into her human body and lay back out to sunbath a bit more with her bikini on. That had been quite the interesting time when Katsumi had transformed not wearing clothes. Naruto had almost fainted from the heavenly sight, but he managed to retain himself to make her promise to wear at least underwear when she transformed back. Katsumi flicked her hand indicating she was listening as she sunbathed. Do you know why it is that I can't seem to get Mei-chan out of my head? Even when I was younger I would constantly find my thoughts drifting to her as they did to Kurenai and Yugao when I met them. Nothing perverted until recently, but still. I never forgot their scent or their looks even if I did not see them for months or years at a time. Naruto said. Katsumi looked at him and responded, that's easy. It is your demonic traits. Once you met someone you considered mate material, they stayed with you. Even at such a young age, when a demon meets someone who will be a potential mate later on, your body records their actions, scent, and body language so you can find them again at a later date. You were subconsciously staking a claim on them even when you were that young. Our maturity comes fast and yours came faster still with your lifestyle. It was a kickstart when you came across that pheromone-infested place when you were 7. Nothing came of it other than basically forcing your mind to accept Kurenai-chan and Mei-chan as potential mates before it went back dormant. That is not to say you did not develop the feelings on your own, but your body accepted them as strong and they would bear healthy children. Naruto blushed at himself for thinking that. Well, thanks for that. What would you say to going on a date when Mei-chan comes before the finals? Katsumi blinked and then launched herself at Naruto. She hugged him and looked right in his eyes. Really? Naruto nodded and wrapped his arms around her waist. Really? Katsumi snuggled into Naruto a bit more and sighed happily as they sat in the clearing. Naruto had left his compound in search of his godfather. He was pretty sure he would be around the bathhouses, but he decided to pay the old man a visit since he had not seen him since he returned Tsunade and Jiraiya could be out on a mission. So Naruto was making his way to the Hokage Tower, ignoring the glares sent his way when he bumped into Shino and Haku. "Ohio, Shino, Haku-chan," Naruto said. Shino and Haku stopped staring at each other before looking at Naruto. "Ohio, Naruto-kun," Haku said, smiling and leaning on Shino's arm. "Ohio, Naruto," Shino said in an almost happy voice. "On a date?" Naruto asked. Haku blushed but nodded. Naruto loved teasing her, it was so easy to get a blush now. "Oh, and where might you be going?" Naruto asked. Haku blushed and said, "Shino-kun won't tell me. He says it needs to be a surprise." Naruto blinked before looking at his teammate. "Oh ho. A surprise, huh? There isn't some ring being hidden, is there?" Smirking at Shino, whose face went a little red. Haku blushed and Shino said, "Well, we mustn't be late, Haku-chan." "Goodbye, Naruto." In a flustered voice. Naruto chuckled and said, "Have a good date." As he walked off, leaving a blushing couple. Naruto arrived at the Hokage Tower around 3 that afternoon. He had enjoyed his little cuddling session with Katsumi, and running into Shino and Haku put him in a really good mood. So he was humming a little song to himself as he walked into the tower. He came up to the Hokage office and asked the secretary when the Hokage would be available, and she said he was in a meeting and that he would be done shortly. The secretary had long ago come to like Naruto. She had initially disliked Naruto, but he proved himself well behaved and helped her whenever she would get rowdy people while he was waiting for the Hokage, so she had come to appreciate him some. Naruto sat and waited for the Hokage to finish his meeting. About 20 minutes passed and Naruto heard the door to the Hokage's office open and he stood up. Out walked Mei and her 2 bodyguards, Ao and Chojuro. Naruto was a little taken aback before smiling and saying, "Ohio, Mei-chan." Mei turned around from the secretary when she heard Naruto's voice, "Naruto-kun." "Ohio," she said exuberantly. Naruto chuckled at her response, hoping that was because she was glad to see him. "What are you doing here so early? The finals don't start for a week," he asked. Mei blinked before saying, "I had some other business to attend to besides the finals and decided to spend some time within my allies' village to get a feel for it and build a reputation." She had a strange glint in her eye when she said, "Other business," and Naruto placed it as wont before she hid it behind her smile. Naruto smiled at her and said, "Would this, other business, include me?" he asked with a cheeky smile. Chojuro snorted before being silenced by a death glare from Mei. "Whatever would give you that idea, Naruto-kun?" she said seductively. Naruto's smile widened at her banter as the secretary looked on with amusement at Naruto. "Oh, I don't know, probably because I can smell you from down the road." He leaned into her ear to whisper. "I really hope that is your feelings I smell," he whispered huskily so no one else could hear. Mei shivered at his words and felt a thrill run down her spine. "Kami, I hit a gold mine. Thank you." Naruto smiled a true smile at Mei's reaction and said, "Where are you staying at?" "I believe the Hokage said we had some things to discuss if we wish for things to be mutually beneficial." Naruto turned business-like. Mei turned to her Mizukage mode and replied, "At the Golden Leaf Hotel on Main Street." Naruto nodded and said, Could I pick you up around 7 tonight for a date, Mei-chan? Mei blushed slightly before saying, that would be fine. Naruto bowed slightly. Then have a good day, Mei-chan. I shall see you in a few hours. Mei bowed slightly as well and left the tower with her guards. She had a date to get ready for. Naruto walked into the Hokage's office to see 3 of the old man's KBs doing paperwork and the Sandame waiting for Naruto. The Sandame smiled at seeing Naruto and said, "On Naruto-kun, what can I do for you today?" Naruto smiled as well and said, "Well, first off, I just ran into Mei, so no need to send Anbu to tell me she is in town. I have already made plans to see her later tonight." The Sandame nodded his head and said, "Okay, was that it, or were you coming to see me for a reason?" Naruto smirked and said, "Well, I need to see Jiraiya-san. He had offered to help me with that technique, and there is one part of the technique I cannot seem to figure out. Also, do you know who used to make the weapon for the technique? I need to get some of my own." The Sandame furrowed his eyebrows and said, "You are only stuck on one part. That technique is quite complex, Naruto-kun, but Jiraiya is currently within the village. So you know where you could probably find him. Also, Tsunade wishes to speak with you. Apparently some things have come to her attention that she wishes to fix. As for the weapons, Higurashi used to make them, but I am sure Kurisu could accommodate you since you have blueprints of it." Naruto nodded. "Okay, I will go to Kurisu and I will talk to Tsunade tomorrow if the situation allows. I am Jiraiya is somewhere near the bathhouses at this point in the day." The Sandame nodded and said, "Have a good day today, Naruto-kun, and I hope things go well tonight." With that, Naruto left, seeing his Gigi with a smile on his face. Naruto had gone to Kurisu's shop and given him a copy of the blueprints to make the kunai. He had to explain his heritage and the reason he had the blueprints, but he trusted Kurisu, and since Kurisu was going to know Anko would be knocking down his door soon to talk to Kurenai and Yugao, he was sure it would work out well tonight to get Yugao and Kurenai with their friend again and give him the night to talk with Mei and Katsumi. He was on the way to the bathhouses to find Jiraiya. He walked into the vicinity and was merely waiting outside the springs before his enhanced hearing picked up a faint giggling sound to his right. Right outside the wall leading to the female side of the onsen. He smirked and walked over next to where he heard the sound originated from. He heard a slight scribbling and another chuckle before he reached out and smacked his godfather on top of his head. "Ouch," Jiraiya said as he rubbed his newly formed lump on his head. Naruto looked at his godfather and said, "I need your help with that, could you please follow me?" Jiraiya blinked before standing up and motioning Naruto to proceed. Naruto led his godfather to training ground 43, a place very few would even venture to, much less train in. He turned around and put a silencing barrier over the clearing and began his questions. "Okay, just to be safe, what do you know of the technique?" Naruto asked. Jiraiya scoffed and said, "I know only the makers of the seals can use it and that your father made it, so only his bloodline could wield it when he made the seal. Any others, the original seal work would not accept that person's blood. Other than that, the mechanics of the technique I don't know, but I do know how he activated it and executed it. In other words, he knows how it was executed by the Yondaime, but not what the seal array is or how the technique actually works by bending space. Naruto does not have a Kekkei Genkei, that's why I said bloodline, not Kekkei Genkei. Just to be clear." Naruto's eyes brightened. "Okay, how did he activate and execute it? You can't help with really anything else in regards to the seal since you don't know it." Jiraiya looked delighted he could help his godson finally. "Okay, take a seat, this won't be long, but I would like to talk to you a little bit if you would give me the chance." Naruto's eyes narrowed. "Don't try to hold the information from me in return for a conversion, Jiraiya-san. That would be a bad move on your part. I can eventually figure this out, you however rely on me to recover your relations." Jiraiya backpedaled. "That's not what I was saying, Naruto. I was going to tell you the information first, but I want to talk with you without anyone else around." Naruto's eyes softened a little. Very well, Jiraiya-san. Jiraiya said, just Jiraiya, please, Naruto. I don't really like formalities and I am more than just an acquaintance at this point, right? Naruto thought for a second and nodded, very well, Jiraiya. You have earned at least that for wanting to talk to me without your previous information coming into play. Jiraiya nodded, happy for the drop in honorific. Okay, from what Minato told me of the technique, he would charge his kunai with some chakra, usually enough for about 10 jumps to it, and throw the kunai. Once thrown, he would wait for it to stop moving before engaging his lightning chakra. Naruto interrupted. I thought he was a wind type. Jiraiya nodded. He was, but he had a small affinity to lightning that not many knew about. He used the lightning chakra in case someone stepped over the kunai, they would receive a mild shock just enough to make them jump back, so he didn't rematerialize on top of them. The seal took the lightning chakra and made the yellow flash for the technique, thus earning him his nickname. Jiraiya ended his lecture on the technique. Naruto nodded, it made sense, but with his sensor array upgrade he could use any chakra to charge the seal. I guess that explains the chakra storage seal I couldn't figure out the reason for, he thought. He turned to Jiraiya and said, thank you. Now what would you like to talk about? Jiraiya's eyes brightened. He probably thought I would not listen to him. Naruto thought. I wanted to apologize for the mission to pick up Tsunade. I had not expected her to stay in town. She usually leaves within 3 to 5 days of being spotted, and she always knew when she was. I was honestly not thinking we would find her. Naruto rolled his eyes. Jiraiya, even if she was not there, you were not doing anything productive to the mission. Regardless of whether or not you have no reason to return speedily, I do. You should have taken this into account. Akatsuki is not going to wait around for you to find the information on them. Neither is Tsunade. If you did not act like an idiot half the time, your spies would be twice as good. Jiraiya's eyes widened. How do you know of Akatsuki? Naruto's eyes widened as well. Shit, I did not mean to mention them. Best to tell him now, Naruto-sama, so that way he can help. He may be a horrible godfather, but he is a great ninja. A powerful one at that. I can sense the sage chakra residue within his coils. The toads have taught him well, but he has not perfected it if he keeps some within him. Kamikaze said. Naruto looked at Jiraiya and sighed. What I say does not leave us. Not even the Hokage knows I know. I want him to believe that, because if he does not, or Tsunade believes I do not, then it makes it easier for me to eliminate them when they show up. Very few could defeat me, and even then those upper Echelons will not leave the villages they are entrenched at. If the Hokage knew, he would try to limit my movement, and this puts the village and everyone in it at risk. Only you or I could defeat the stronger ones, and the rest of the weaker ones would take 2 to 3 teams of Anbu to defeat. You know this. Jiraiya thought about it for a few minutes before agreeing. You are right, the few I know about would rip anyone I know apart. Even you. But if you master the technique, you will be hard to beat. Naruto responded. My speed surps the Yondaimes. I repeat, only the upper Echelons stand a chance against me. Only the top 2 could defeat me if I had the Hiraishin at my disposal. Jiraiya gaped at Naruto. I have not seen you move at that speed, and neither has anyone else within this village. It has not been recorded. How could you match your father at your age? Naruto smirked. Deception is a ninja's best friend. How do you think I am at that speed? Think about what I took from Gigi when I was 7. Add that to my training regime. Jiraiya thought for a moment before his eyes widened. No. You have a resistance seal on you. What level are you at? Naruto smiled. Wouldn't you like to know? Jiraiya scowled. Damn it, Gaki, this is serious. Naruto's smile disappeared. Tell you what. You help me kill some Akatsuki members and I will tell you. Specifically, the zombie brothers are going to be a pain even for the 2 of us, they have some freaky powers. Jiraiya's scowl deepened before he said, fine, I only know of them and Itachi Uchiha and Hoshige Kisame. Naruto frowned. Your spies need to get better. There is also Akasuna no Sasori, Deidara from Iowa, a lady that uses origami for jutsu, and someone who is said to have powers equaling a god because he managed to fight Hanzo and win single-handedly. There is also what appears to be a crazy person named Toby, but he seems more than he appears. Jiraiya stood dumbstruck as Naruto managed to list all of the Akatsuki members when it took him 5 years to learn of the 4 he had. Well, that is some interesting group of people. Naruto nodded. Now if that is all, I have a date in about an hour I need to get to. Jiraiya smiled pervertedly. Got to get with Kurenai-chan and Yugao-chan, nay. Naruto shook his head. Not tonight, it's Katsumi-chan and Mei-chan. Jiraiya shook his head and looked at Naruto. Mei-chan? He asked. Naruto smirked. The Mizukage. Jiraiya's brain almost overloaded. Good job, Naruto, he said, holding up both thumbs while letting his nose bleed. He suddenly found himself flat on his. Don't think about my girlfriends like that again, or next time it might be a Rasengan. Naruto warned, his icy cold eyes staring down at Jiraiya. Jiraiya merely nodded as Naruto walked off. What Jiraiya could not see was the smile on Naruto's face that he could rely on Jiraiya in helping him against Akatsuki. He wasn't really angry about Jiraiya's comments, if anything it made him proud someone was proud of him. However, he was never going to let Jiraiya know that. He was sure Jiraiya only said those things because they were true. Naruto was not a pervert, but he had to admit he had 4 of the most beautiful women on the planet who loved him. At least 3 who loved him and another he hoped did. Naruto was dressing for his date. He had let Katsumi take the main house to freshen up after Anko had come banging on the door for Kurenai and Yugao. They had decided to reintroduce themselves to the bar and left Katsumi and Naruto to their date with Mei. Naruto was in one of the adjoining houses to the main house. He had left Katsumi the room to freshen up for the date. He was wearing a kimono that was blue like his eyes, only with little lightning bolts across his kimono. He had on a necklace with a moon pendant on it, a present from Yugao. As well as his usual smoke bomb earring was replaced by a crimson wind gust earring. Look up Mysterious Abyss Keyblade from Kingdom Hearts 2 and imagine the very end of the Keyblade in earring form. They had given these to him for the 6th month anniversary, and he was wearing them to give him strength to talk to Mei tonight. He walked into the entrance hall of the main compound and said, Katsumi-chan, are you ready? Katsumi's 1 more minute turned into a full 10, but when Katsumi came down the stairs, Naruto thought it more than worth the wait by the position of his jaw, which was on the floor. Katsumi's dress screamed to be looked at, but only those close to her would get the real treat. It was a yellow dress with a V showing the valley of her S to anyone close and tantalizing those from afar. The waist hugged her curves and led to a almost full skirt downwards, but it had slits to reveal tantalizing sneak peeks at her legs and her anklet bracelet, which had a crimson fox head on it. Katsumi giggled at Naruto's expression. She had hoped to get such a reaction out of him. He had been nothing but a gentleman since she got out the seal, but she had been worried about how she looked in front of him. It was the first time she worried about others' opinions, but his meant a lot to her. So she was excited when she got the reaction she wanted. She giggled and said, we should get going, shouldn't we? Naruto started to move and responded, hi hi. They set off to Mei's hotel to pick her up.